beyond reality. I thought it was a nightmare and I was going to wake up anytime, but it was getting longer, you know. So then on the third day I was dehydrated. I was probably dying already, I don't know. And something inside me gave me hope. So I thought, maybe I can escape. So I called aloud, and one of these criminals came up and dragged me from my feet to the outside of the cave and uncovered me. It took me a while to regain my eyesight because I was blinded already from being covered up and in a cave for those days. And my eyelids were swelling from the bites of these insects, these bugs. So after a while I regained my eyesight and I noticed it was sunset, and the dim lights of sunset were shedding some light into the cave. When I looked inside, all I wanted was to run even if they shoot me. Because looking inside, I saw these curtains of spider web everywhere and big spiders on the spider webs. So all I wanted was to run. I didn't care what happened. I didn't want to go back in there. And the problem was I couldn't stand up. I couldn't get up because my blood circulation was a mess from being tied up all those days. So I couldn't escape even if I wanted. So this guy covered me up again and threw me back in the cave. As I said, I spent 16 days altogether in the cave. So I started to eat. Once a day they would come up. I started to eat whatever they were bringing. I don't even want to tell you what they were bringing up. It doesn't come to the case. But they were bringing some things up to eat. So I was eating, trying to get my energy back. And I couldn't move much because if I moved too much, I would scare those animals that it will turn into a hell, the cave. So I had to move very carefully. And on the 15th day, by the way, I kept track of time until the day 21st of my kidnapping. After that, I lost track of time. But on the day 15, they took me out of the cave, and I found myself surrounded by a lot of guerrillas, rebels. They were dressed up in military outfits, but I knew right away they weren't soldiers. And they were probably between the ages of 14 and 21, something like that. And one of them told me he was the commandant. He was probably 30 years old. And he was talking, like walking in circles, just making a big show in front of these young people that he was in charge. And he was telling me that I was to pay an incredibly high ransom. Money I didn't have, but they thought I had that money. Because somehow they thought, because I've been in TV and movies and all of these things, they have seen me throughout the years, whoever was the one that put this together, they thought I was loaded with money. And as you know, we have this problem with rebels in Colombia that is 55 years old, and it's getting worse. I hope they get rid of that soon, but it is a very difficult problem. And they are regular criminals, but they claim to have an ideology. But I tell you, I live with them, and they are regular thieves. That's what they are. So, and on top of that, murderers, and I mean, it's so horrifying. So then what happened is that he told me that I was to pay that ransom, and he showed me the names of my sisters and all the addresses, and to show me that he knew where they lived, and he did. He knew where they were, just to tell me that if I try to escape, they will kill them. And also if I refuse to pay what they were asking, they will kill them too. And then on top of that, he told me the 6 guys that brought me into that cave sold me out to them. So I was being exchanged in the middle of the jungle as a commodity because they sold me. It was like 2 groups making a deal. That's why they kept me in that cave waiting for the guerrillas to come, and they were late. They were supposed to come on the 2nd day. They took 15 days to come. So after that, he told me, the guys that sold me out to the guerrillas, the conditions of the deal were that as soon as I paid the ransom, I was to be shot because they didn't want me to go back to my hometown to set them up with the police because I had seen their faces. So I was sentenced to death. And then he ordered me back into the cave. They covered me up again and tied my hands, this time to the front, which was a little relief. And I got back into this cave. The 6 guys that sold me out left, and I was left behind with some rebels guarding me. When I fell back in that cave, I tell you, if you think that the first 15 days of my kidnapping were horrific, that night was the most horrifying one. There was no hope to escape. I was going to be killed in the jungle, buried in the jungle, and nobody was ever going to find me. And just thinking about my sons waiting for me forever to return, it was just killing my heart. And then also the irony that I have spent most of my life away from Colombia, and I end up kidnapping my hometown, take it to a jungle, and I'm going to be killed there. So I felt like I was already dead, but I wasn't buried yet, but I was dead inside. And then I tried to bring something from within me to hold me through this hardship. So I tried to get a hold of all these Eastern philosophies that I dearly hold as something so deep and powerful, and bringing all this magic and esoteric sciences and metaphysics and the magic of the crystals and astrological charts and all of these things that I lived for all these years. I lived 33 years in mortal sin, away from the church, away from God, away from everything. I didn't believe in sin any longer. It didn't exist. I was the little king of my little kingdom, and the whole world were my servants. That was the big building of pride I was built in. And I think it's everybody's case when you are away from God. That's what you are. And then at that moment, that little kingdom and that little king was in ashes. I was nothing. There was nothing left of me. And there was nothing in me that will hold me through, because I got nothing in me that was worthwhile. Nothing that will hold me. So then I realized I tried to go back to my early years to bring my prayers from home, from the church, from the school, and I couldn't even remember the Our Father. Nothing. I didn't remember anything. So I was in deeper trouble then, empty. Some people say they hit bottom, but I was below bottom, if there is such a place. And that is the moment of God, believe it or not. I begin to go through a mystical experience with the Lord. I was far from thinking or knowing that that was coming from God. No clue. But I tell you, the first thing that I'm going to share with you is called an illumination of conscience. That's what they told me in a Steubenville University in Notre Dame. Some people have been studying with me this case, and I don't know much about it. I don't know how to explain it. But you will think for yourself what it means. I was awake and conscious. And all of a sudden, I started to see my whole life, to relive my life. I saw me around age 3, and I was in the inside patio of the house where I was born. And I was on a tricycle with a stick in my hand. I was born in one of those old Spanish houses that have inside patios with plants. And then I was going around very fast, hitting the plants. And I could hear like a maid or someone calling me not to do it. And I was petrified because I didn't understand, why am I seeing my life? Why am I seeing myself? And then I remember that I thought maybe I'm hallucinating because of the poison from the animals that bite me. And then I thought maybe I'm losing it. I'm going insane because of all this tragedy. But then I remember before my mother died, she went into an ecstasy that lasted about 3 hours. And she talked about her whole life, and then she died. So I said to myself, I am dying, just like my mother. That's why I'm seeing myself. But something deep inside me was telling me otherwise. But I didn't want to hear that, because that was too mysterious, too big. I didn't want to face that. So I kept on trying to rationalize what was going on. And I kept on seeing myself, By the time I reached age like around 11 or 12, I went into the most amazing pain. And it's because for the first time in my life, I felt the pain of sin. You see, I remember up until I was 14 years old that I used to go to confession. And I probably repented before I confessed. I don't even remember if I did. But one thing I remember for sure, I never felt the pain of sin. Not such a thing ever happened to me before. This pain was so deep in my soul, deep in my heart, that I could never ever describe it to you. And this is only the scenes when I was 11 or 12. Imagine what was happening when I started to see myself at 18,